Amman, home to over 4 million people and the capital city of Jordan. Don't let the modern city fool you. The history of Amman goes way back to the Neolithic period. Here at the Amman Citadel, visitors not only get amazing panoramic views of the modern city, but also get up close with Amman's long history. Join me as I trace the history of Amman, back to a time when it was known as Rabbath Ammon, Philadelphia, Amman, and today as the Amman Citadel. The earliest structure at the Citadel is the early Bronze Age tomb that dates back to the 23rd century BC. The cave housed a series of rock-cut tombs which were modified for communal burial during the Middle Bronze Age. The cave was reused for different purposes by various civilizations over time. Around 1200 BC, the Ammonites made this area their capital city and named it Rabbath Ammon. In the Bible, Rabbath Ammon is sometimes referred to as Rabbah of Ammon or just Rabbah. There is little archaeological evidence of the Ammonites. Near Rabbath Ammon lies the remains of Rujum al-Malfuf, a watchtower dating from the Ammonite period. There are also remains of an Ammonite palace at the citadel. A lot of what we know about the Ammonites come from the Bible. The Old Testament refers to the Ammonites over 100 times. In fact, we learn about the origin of the Ammonites from the Bible. After Lot and his daughters escaped the destruction at Sodom and Gomorrah, they dwelt at a mountain. Genesis chapter 19 tells us how Lot's older daughter got her father drunk and had relations with him. The next day, the younger daughter does the same. The older daughter gave birth to her son Moab, who would become the father of the Moabites. The younger daughter gave birth to Ben-Ami, who would become the father of the Ammonites. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, we learn that the Ammonites settled at the site where God destroyed the giants who were already settled there. The Bible also tells us about the religion of the Ammonites. These verses refer to Moloch and Milcom as the god of the Ammonites. The worship of Moloch involved child sacrifice, which may have been why the Bible refers to Moloch as the abomination of the Ammonites. In 1961, an inscription dating back to the 9th century BC, written in the Ammonite language, was discovered. Now known as the Amman Citadel inscription, this fragment has the first reference to Milcom. Although the first letter is missing, scholars are fairly certain that it is the reference to the god of the Ammonites. The inscription is an incomplete fragment, which makes it impossible to determine its original purpose. Some scholars also feel that Milcom might have been a title rather than a reference to a deity. The relationship between the Israelites and the Ammonites were like that of rivals. This can be seen in multiple verses in the Bible. A well-known encounter between the Israelites and the Ammonites happened right here at Rabbath Ammon. In response to an Ammonite king humiliating King David's delegates, King David moved his army to Rabbath Ammon for battle. One famous member of David's army was Uriah the Hittite. King David ordered Uriah to be placed on the front line of the battle where he would be killed, as King David wanted to marry Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. Here, we could be looking at the very spot where Uriah the Hittite fought his final battle. Things weren't always sour between the Israelites and the Ammonites. Solomon, King David's son, married an Ammonite princess, Naamah, who bore him a son, Rehoboam. Rabbath Ammon was eventually conquered by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Persians. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Persepolis, the capital of the Persian Empire, and established Greek control over the Levant. After the death of Alexander the Great, his generals fought to control his vast empire. After almost 20 years of fighting, the Ptolemies ruled over Egypt and controlled Jordan from 301 BC to 198 BC. The Seleucids, based in Antioch, ruled Jordan from 198 BC to 63 BC. It was around this time Ptolemy II rebuilt the city and renamed it Philadelphia for a former Ptolemaic leader, Philadelphus. Philadelphia, along with much of the region, was under Roman control after Emperor Pompey's conquest of the Levant in 63 BC. It was around this time 10 cities from the nearby regions became part of the Decapolis League. These cities shared culture, language, and economic ties but functioned as autonomous city-states. Although Decapolis means 10 cities, depending on the sources you refer to, the number of cities part of the league exceeds 10. This led the scholars to believe that the Decapolis referred to a geographical area rather than 10 cities. Philadelphia became known for its enlightened cultural centers and beautiful architecture. The walls of the citadel, originally built during the Bronze Ages, were strengthened under the Romans. The Temple of Hercules was constructed between 162 and 166 AD. The temple faced east and had 6 33-foot columns, making it larger than any temple in Rome. Today the temple is in ruins. The stones were reused in other building projects at the citadel under the Byzantines and the Islamic rulers. Some of the destruction can also be due to earthquakes in the region. The temple was said to have had a colossal statue of Hercules. Today, just fragments exist. The elbow and 3 fingers are what remains. The amphitheater, Odeon, Forum, and Nymphaeum were built in the 2nd century AD during the time of Antoninus Pius. The amphitheater could seat up to 6,000 people. The seating area was divided into 3 horizontal sections. The first section, nearest to the stage, was where the rulers would sit. The second section was where the military would sit. The third section is the highest section where the general public sat. Scholars believe that the statue of Athena was here on top of the amphitheater. The amphitheater is still used for cultural activities today. The Odeon was a smaller theater seating about 600 people and was frequently used for musical performances. The Forum was a square between the 2 theaters and was once the largest public squares in the Roman world. A short distance from the Roman amphitheater is the Nymphaeum. The structure had a 2-story complex with fountains, mosaics, and a swimming pool. It was dedicated to the water nymphs. After the Romans came the Byzantine period. This Byzantine-era church at the citadel dates back to 550 AD. The apse at the front faces east and has been partially reconstructed. The Corinthian columns were taken from the Temple of Hercules. The mosaic floor has been covered over for preservation. In 630 AD, after the advent of Islam, the Rashidun Caliphate conquered Jordan and the surrounding areas from the Byzantines. It was around this time Philadelphia changed its name back to Amman. After the Rashiduns came the Umayyad Caliphate in 661 AD. The Umayyads built an Umayyad complex that was used by the governor, his family, employees, and guards. The most impressive structure in the Umayyad complex is the Monumental Gateway that dates from 730 AD. The gateway was constructed on top of an earlier building dating from the Byzantine period. The dome has been reconstructed with wood. The gateway has a crucifix plan where visitors would be screened before heading to the palace. Upon being screened, visitors would walk down the colonnaded street to the reception hall. Just outside the gateway is the courtyard with markets. To the south are the remains of the mosque. This mosque dates back to 750 AD and is built on the highest point at the citadel. The hammam or bath was constructed in 730 AD. The hammam would have been decorated with mosaics and paintings, sadly none of which have survived. Next to the hammam is the open cistern or birka. Measuring 17.5 meters in diameter, the cistern supplied water to the baths, latrines and other parts of the citadel. Various earthquakes, most notably the one in 749 AD, destroyed the buildings in the complex. In 750 AD, Amman was conquered by the Abbasid Caliphate. A lime kiln dating back to the time of the Abbasids was found. It was used for the renovation and building projects at the citadel. Amman was in decline when the Abbasids moved their capital from Damascus to Baghdad. Amman continued to decline during the reign of the Ayyubid Caliphate. A watchtower dating back to the Ayyubid period was discovered at the citadel. Amman was then briefly controlled by the Mamluks before becoming part of the Ottoman Empire in 1516 AD. Amman was abandoned during the 15th century. Since then, the area was periodically used by Bedouin tribes and seasonal farmers who would seek shelter and cultivate crops in the vicinity. Things started to change in 1878 when the Circassian refugees began to settle in Al-Balad, what is now near downtown Amman. The Circassians were displaced from their home in the northeast shore of the Black Sea due to the Russian-Circassian War. By 1900, there were about 2,000 inhabitants living in Amman. In 1921, Emir Abdullah ibn al-Hussein, later known as King Abdullah I, founded the Emirate of Transjordan and made Amman its capital. On the 25th of May 1946, the Emirate of Transjordan was no longer a British protectorate upon the ratification of the Treaty of London. The Emirate of Transjordan was renamed the Hashemite Kingdom of Transjordan, and Abdullah I was crowned the first king in Amman. Over the years, the population of Amman grew as the city attracted immigrants and refugees from the Levant. The city too has expanded greatly. Amman was built on 7 hills. Today, Amman spans over 19 hills. The citadel has been preserved as an open-air museum. In 1951, the Jordan Archaeological Museum was constructed at the citadel. The museum houses various artifacts like pottery, figurines, statues, jewelry, and a coin collection obtained from the archaeological sites around Jordan. Visitors to the citadel today can come face to face with the history of Amman. Oh, and take a great selfie with the panoramic view of the modern city. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Please let me know by hitting the like button and by dropping a line in the comments section. If you enjoy documentaries in general, do consider subscribing. Well, until my next video, stay safe and I'll see you soon.